Thank you, Sophie, and I hope everyone had a great lunch. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the common cyber threats that are out there that are affecting small businesses, medium businesses, and obviously MSPs that manage those businesses. And I'm going to talk about what constitutes good cybersecurity. What are some of the things that you should look out for when selecting a cybersecurity vendor for your customers? And then how Bitdefender basically addresses those cybersecurity concerns that I'm going to cover in the earlier pieces. And then we're going to have some time at the end for some Q&A. So I ask you to please think of some questions and save them till the end, and we'll be happy to answer them for you. So the first thing in addressing cybersecurity is understanding what are the cybersecurity threats out there, especially when you're dealing with smaller to medium-sized companies. Folks aren't really focused on the new and emerging threats that are out there or where there's a risk within their company. They're more concerned about running their businesses and making sure that succeeds. So it's up to MSPs and partners and so on to be aware of the types of threats that are out there and be able to communicate that to your customers. So the threats are really the story. Understanding how they operate and where you need protection is the most important piece. So the first type of threat, business email compromise, another term for phishing or spear phishing. And this is still the most successful type of threat, that initial attack vector that we're seeing out there because it works, right? They're using these links that they attach to emails that are fooling people. And once the person clicks on the links, then the attack begins. And the thing that's kind of changed in the last few years as far as these types of phishing emails, especially recently with the emergence of these AI tools that have become available to the public, is that they're becoming a lot more sophisticated. So in the past, spotting a phishing email wasn't too difficult. There's usually some type of grammatical error there, spelling errors and things that gave away the plot. Nowadays, it's a lot more complicated because these AI tools, ChatGPT, Bard, and so on, are exceptional at translation. And the cyber criminals are using these tools and some other tools they developed themselves to create very convincing, very realistic-looking phishing emails, and now phishing text messages as well that they're using as another point of entry into organizations. The other type of threat is, of course, ransomware. It's the top of everyone's mind. Everyone knows what ransomware is. They gain access to a system, they encrypt files on that system, and then they demand a ransom to decrypt those files. And again, that continues a very profitable method of extorting money from organizations, from cyber criminals. But then the next type of way that is, as I talked about earlier, is being used in conjunction with the ransomware is data exfiltration. So data exfiltration is where they're able to establish some kind of connection, network connection to the organization, and they're able to siphon information from that organization into their own possession that they can then either use for future attacks or they can sell on the dark web. And a lot of different tactics that they use for this is, they'll rename files and upload them to an FTP. So they may get a hold of a bunch of Quicken financial files, rename them to images, and then upload them somewhere, and to an untrained eye, it just looks like somebody's uploading pictures to Instagram, for example, when in fact, very sensitive financial information is being siphoned out of the organization. And when I mentioned that they use this in conjunction with ransomware, so they like to collect as much money as possible. So on the one end, they're collecting based on the encrypted data and selling those decryption keys, and then the other end, they're collecting by not releasing the information that they've stolen. And one of the things that we're starting to see now is that the actual ransomware detonation where they encrypt the files is often being used as a distraction for the data exfiltration. So what do I mean by that? And this is especially relevant for smaller and medium-sized businesses that don't have a dedicated security team. So when they want to perform the data exfiltration, what they'll do is they'll trigger the ransomware to start encrypting files. So then, an IT staff is watching all these files being encrypted. They're scrambling to protect the files, to create backups and all that. And while they're doing that, the data is being exfiltrated on the other end. So it's being used not only as a double extortion method, but also as a distraction so that they can get to the much more valuable data that they exfiltrate that they can later collect on. MSPs, of course, are especially at risk for supply chain attacks. We've seen some solutions for managing businesses that have been compromised and in turn have caused a lot of problems for MSPs that their customers have been compromised due to the same management software that they're using to manage their IT infrastructure. So that's something that MSPs need to be aware of. Supply chain attacks are on the rise, and it's something that's especially impactful to smaller businesses because once they fall victim to an attack, oftentimes, it's not just the money that they have to pay out in a ransom that's damaging, but the damage to the reputation can be irreparable damage to a smaller company. May not be able to recover from a breach. So in order to address these issues, these risks that we talked about, what constitutes good cybersecurity? So at Bitdefender, we like to think of good cybersecurity in 3 pillars. We have prevention, protection, and detection and response. So prevention is anything that prevents the attacks, and that includes risk assessment, being able to identify when there's vulnerable software on systems, when there's user behavior that could put the organization at risk. For example, having things like encryption for hard drives and on laptops, very important in case a laptop gets lost or stolen. Then on the protection end, you have things like robust antivirus with machine learning. You have network attack protection that prevents, if one system gets compromised, it prevents the attacker from getting on other systems on the network. And then obviously detection and response is the piece that gives you information on the attack itself that can then help the organization further, harden their security posture going forward. So that by understanding exactly where they were attacked, how they were attacked, they can then take preventative measures. And luckily for MSPs and businesses of all sizes, Bitdefender has a very extensive portfolio that offers all of these things in one comprehensive package, one consolidated package that is all managed from the Bitdefender Gravity Zone console or whatever management tool of your choice is. We have integrations with a lot of the popular management tools. So we talked about business email compromise and phishing. One of the tools that we have to address that is Bitdefender Email Security. It works, it's a cloud-based email security product where you basically redirect the mail from the organization to our cloud servers, and then we scan the mail and you purge out anything malicious. That includes malicious links, that includes malicious attachments, and so on. There's also content control features as well, so if you want to prevent certain content from getting to your users, whether that's something sexual or anything else, you have control over that. We have impersonation protection. So what this basically does is a lot of these phishing attacks, they look like they're coming from somebody within the organization. Our impersonation protection protects against those types of attacks where it compares, who the email is coming from to where it's actually being sent from. And of course, we do all kinds of different checks to make sure the integrity of the email to make sure that it's legitimate. Then on the endpoint side, we have our endpoint protection that not only provides very advanced antivirus with machine learning and AI, but it also has, again, protection against, if you're not using our email security, the malicious links gets to the endpoint, someone clicks on it, we're going to prevent them from getting to that malicious site that can contain a malicious script that allows the attacker to gain a backdoor into your system. It also includes fileless attack protection. Most of the modern attacks don't involve files being actually written to the hard drive. So older antivirus solutions that only scans for files on the hard drive aren't going to be able to detect these threats. With Bitdefender, we will be able to detect this threat thanks to our fileless attack detection that can detect when things like PowerShell scripts are being used to compromise the system and so on. We also have, again, the attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated. A lot of these attacks are starting off with the attacker already having some type of credentials that they can use to access the organization. Oftentimes, these credentials will be something that they gather from another attacker that was involved in an earlier breach that was able to steal some information from the organization. And now they're using these credentials to get into the system. So you need something like Gravity Zone XDR that can identify all these different surface areas that could be targets. So as an example, if you have an compromised Office 365 account, we can detect when something suspicious is going on there through our integration with Office 365 and prevent the attack from reaching the actual endpoints in the organizations. Same thing if you're using Active Directory, for example, and you're seeing that, our XDR is noticing that there's a user that's creating AD accounts with administrative access where they normally don't. That's something that we're going to flag as malicious or suspicious, notify the security team so that then they can take action. And that's where anomaly detection comes in. That is part of our Gravity Zone XDR, that it can establish what a baseline behavior is for users, for systems, and then determine when that behavior is deviated from that could be an indicator of an attack. So for example, if you have a bunch of developers' machines and they use PowerShell a lot of PowerShell sessions opening on the developer's machine is normal. Obviously, if it's doing anything malicious, again, we're going to detect that. But if we start seeing that behavior on a machine in the accounting department, where usually not a lot of PowerShell scripts are being launched, that's going to raise some flags with our anomaly detection. This is unusual behavior, something may be going on here, and then we can alert security teams. Integrity monitoring, so if you're looking to establish a zero trust environment, integrity monitoring could be a key piece to that. It can monitor for unauthorized changes not only to files, but to entire systems. That includes the registry, that includes in-memory changes and so on. So if you really want to lock down specific servers, for example, to make sure that unauthorized changes of any kind are not performed, you can do that with Gravity Zone integrity monitoring. And then for MSPs that are maybe you don't have a lot of staff that is highly experienced in cybersecurity, or you have a high-value customer that's demanding a specific knowledge of cybersecurity in order to protect their environment, we have Bitdefender MDR Foundations we call it, which is tailored just for MSPs that allows you to basically offload the security responsibility off of your plate, and Bitdefender will take care of that. They offer 24/7 monitoring, threat hunting. We do all kinds of threat assessments and reporting. So customers get the full benefit of our MDR solution with our Bitdefender MDR Foundations that you can offer to your customers right from the Gravity Zone portal. And it's tailored specifically for MSPs, so you can turn it on and off for select customers as you see fit. One of the challenges, obviously, that MSPs have is deployment and management of solutions across different customers with different environments. Bitdefender handles that through our Gravity Zone console. Again, we can deploy to varied environments running Windows, Linux, and Mac operating systems, Chromebooks, mobile devices as well, all from the same Gravity Zone console. And again, we also offer integration with third-party products as well. And again, we simplified deployment by having the singular console, the Gravity Zone console, where you can manage and deploy everything from and assign policies specific to a customer, specific to individual users within that customer's environment, and so on. Then I talked briefly about Bitdefender MDR, so I'm going to get into a little bit more details now. So MDR Foundations was an MDR service that was specifically designed to cater to the MSP market. We understand that you have different needs in individual customers, so we created this service to be affordable for smaller customers and be easy to manage for MSPs. Again, you have the Bitdefender MDR portal. From there, you can enable this service to individual customers that ask for it, and build them individually without affecting any other customer in your environment. And then one of the big things people ask is, well, there's all these cybersecurity vendors. What's the big difference that makes Bitdefender different? So one of the big differences is the Bitdefender Labs team. So the Bitdefender Labs team, we've been in this cybersecurity space for 22 years, and we're only dedicated to cybersecurity. And our labs team includes engineers, includes researchers, includes people that teach neural networks in universities that are dedicated to cybersecurity, that are dedicated to finding out how these different threats operate. And we develop tools and new technologies to help fight cybercrime. And that includes adversarial AI, for example, that we developed that allows us to use AI to develop techniques to counter emerging threats. A good example of this is the WannaCry ransomware. When that was detected in the wild, we already had detection for it 3 years before it was detected in the wild because of our adversarial AI that was already trained to identify that type of attack technique. So the customers that had Bitdefender installed were already protected and prepared for the WannaCry ransomware. We also work with law enforcement around the world to really thwart cybercrime. In the screenshot, you can see here an example of one of those situations where we actually took down a cybercrime market on the deep web We assisted Interpol on taking that down. So we're very much working with law enforcement to thwart cybercrime as well. And then our security is award-winning. You know, we were just named a leader by Forrester, and if you look at independent evaluations like AV comparatives and AV tests, Bitdefender, you know, one of our biggest strengths is our consistency. You may see a vendor that excels one year and then they don't perform so well the next year. With Bitdefender, we're always either at the top or right there with these different evaluations. We were actually only one of 2 vendors in the last 9 years to get the top marks in, for example, AV test in all the different categories that they have. So, you know, we're a trusted, experienced cybersecurity company and, you know, ready for the modern threats. So the main takeaways that I want you guys to remember is that the threats are the story. A lot of customers, they think that having just good AV, especially smaller customers, is all that they need. But they don't really understand all the different areas where threats are getting into their environment. Like we talked about earlier with, you know, the unmanaged devices, one of the biggest areas where threats are coming in. So educating them on these threats, on what the risks are, is very important. And then being able to offer solutions to those risks is also equally important. For MSPs, obviously, you want a solution that works with you, that doesn't create more work for you. So having that consolidation of Gravity Zone and all the different tools that we offer, from the risk assessment to patch management, email security, and so on, from one console, from one centralized location, makes it very easy to manage and deploy to your customers. And then if you want to offload that security monitoring and threat intelligence and all of that, we have MDR foundations that's catered just for MSPs, so they can do that if they don't have the staff to maybe really address the security needs of your customer. You know, Bitdefender MDR is there for you. So, anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
You said you were one of only 2 vendors that got the top award. Are you prepared to tell us who the other one was?
So the other one, and not the top award, but who's consistently had the top marks for the past 9 years. The other one is Kaspersky.
Okay.
So, yes, exactly. It's the fact.
Quick question. So we've seen an increase of multi-vendor stack when it comes to security, like SentinelOne and things like that. And what's your opinion of that running on in tandem with something like Bitdefender?
Well, generally speaking, from the Bitdefender perspective, it's sort of unnecessary because we offer basically everything that you need to secure the environment. Again, I mentioned risk assessment. You know, if you go with a lot of other vendors and you want to analyze system risk or user behavior risk, you're going to have to get another product, and that's another console to manage and so on. With Bitdefender, you get that right out of the box with our core offering. You get user and operating system and app risk assessment. Patch management, the same thing. If you want to stay on top of patches for Windows or Linux, oftentimes you're going to have to get a different solution for that. With Bitdefender, we offer all of that. So from our perspective, you don't really need to stack security in that sense because you get everything with Bitdefender. And quite frankly, what we've seen is if you have, for example, 2 AVs on the same system, it's not going to give you any more protection. It's just going to slow down that system. So just stick with one that works. Yes, sir. So that's a great question. So false positives can be the bane of any security team, right? You don't want to have a solution that's going to be raising a bunch of false positives that you're going to have to chase. It's like the boy who cried wolf story. If you get enough of them, you're going to actually ignore the real threat. So Bitdefender, we're very much committed to reducing false positives. I'll give you an example of, recently, MITRE had their evaluations of the different security solutions. Some of these solutions, they did their best to get the highest detections possible, but in a real world scenario, that's going to generate a lot of false positives. We stay committed to our ethos of just being real and providing real security to customers. So we didn't get the highest possible score, but we did, detect all of the different vectors that were associated with an actual attack. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So in that evaluation, one of the detections was base 64 encoding. So if you detect base 64 encoding, it can be used in an attack, but it's also used in just about 90% of emails. So if you're getting a detection every time base 64 encoding is used, that means you're going to have thousands of false positives every time an email comes in, right? So that was one of the areas where some vendors, they scored 100%. They detected all the base 64 encodings because MITRE doesn't take false positives into considerations. We chose not to include that detection because in a real world scenario, all that's going to do is generate false positives. And there's other ways to detect a threat that doesn't involve detecting when base 64 encoding is being used because it's such a common protocol. I hope that was clear. Yes, sir. For XDR, it does require that they are connected to the internet because the information, the AI that does a lot of the interpretation of the raw data is on our cloud servers, yeah. Yes? Yeah, so we have all kinds of integrations with different RMMs, whether you're using ConnectWise, Kaseya, Datto, so on and so forth, that basically allows you to use those tools to deploy and to manage without necessarily going into the Gravity Zone console at all. You can purchase Gravity Zone through a partner and still have that same integration, so you don't have to purchase it through an RMM service provider.
It's more about deployment of Bitdefender rather than having two solutions that can do patch management, for example, and one driving the other.
Yeah, it's deployment and management of Bitdefender, all from the RMM solution. So if that's what your staff is comfortable with, you don't have to learn an entirely new tool. Just keep using, ConnectWise, for example. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you very much for your time. And our booth is over there. If you guys do have any questions or you just want to chat, please reach out to us.